Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eliza. I am the Customer Engagement Specialist here at Pandel. This is the first of a series we're calling the Pandel Leadership Series, and I'm so glad you could join us today. Our speaker today will be Doug Walker, and I will now ask Dean to pop on there and I will pass it off to you. Thanks so much, Dean.
Thank you, Eliza. It's my pleasure today to introduce Doug Walker. Doug's got a chemical engineering degree from the U of C. He's got 40 plus years technical and leadership experience across several industries. He was co-founder and general manager of SGS Limited Oil and Gas Partnership. He's co-founder and chairman of the Trinity Christian School. He was co-founder and president COO of Trapeze.com, which later became SearsTravel.ca. CEO and COO of Noise Solutions Industrial Noise Control. And he was vice president of just about everything at Harvest Operations Corp, where I met him. Doug also has his Advanced Toastmaster Gold and President Tuesday Nooners Toastmasters. And he has Wine and Spirits Education Trust Level 2 Diploma with distinction. That's very close to me. On a personal level, I worked with Doug for almost 10 years at Harvest Operations. Harvest Operations was a South Korean government oil and gas company. Most recently, he was my VP and conduit to the Harvest Operations Korean C-level. Because of very challenging language barriers, cultural differences, and significant budget reductions over the past many years, it became very challenging to manage 75 pieces of software, hardware, and infrastructure, and most of all, staffing. I cannot express enough how integral Doug was to me using his tact, honesty, and communication skills while dealing with our C-level. I can speak for many harvesters when I say Doug held the highest respect of any of the Harvest executive that we dealt with over the past decade. Please allow me to introduce Mr. Doug Walker.
Well, thank you very much, Dean, for those kind words. And thanks to everybody online for spending your time with us this afternoon. My hope is that everybody will find this worthwhile and that there will be something useful that you can take away from today's presentation. As Dean noted, I've worked at senior levels at different companies in several industries over my career. And the goal of today's presentation is to share with you some guidelines or tools that have served me well over the years in those roles. They're not magic formulas, rather they're tools or guidelines that, if properly applied, should help you make sense out of how to structure your teams and their activities to meet critical business deliverables. I encourage you to take this material, digest it, and decide for yourselves, though, how best to apply it for your particular situation. In other words, be a student, not a follower. And this applies to all things in life, really: relationships, social issues, politics, and business, of course. We need to be students, listen and absorb, but at the end of it, make sure that whatever you do and apply is the product of your own conclusion. Today's agenda is going to touch on the strategic business model for translating the corporate mission and goals right down to specific tasks at the individual level. I want to show you how to start with a situational analysis to understand your team or your company's unique situation before building out your strategic path forward, and how to do that in a map to lay out your corporate or team strategy. I also want to talk about the benefit of action registers to keep everyone on task within your team. And finally, I have a few thoughts on financial models and project lookbacks before we wrap up. Mission and vision, goals and objectives, strategies and tactics. It can all sound so confusing, and I know it is for many people because I see these mixed up all the time. But what do they mean? How do they differ? And how do they relate to each other? This visual shows you how. Starting with corporate values, then moving on to mission and vision, then goals and objectives, then strategies and tactics, and ultimately to work plans and how you staff and organize your team or company. And my experience has been that you should follow it in exactly that order to be as effective as you can be. The executive or the board of an organization normally works from strategies on up, and teams and staff from objectives on down, with a little overlap in the middle, as you can see. It all starts, or should start, with values. It's how the company knows it has the right folks on board, and it's how you as an employee should know that you're in the right company for you. It should be what you as a team member, what your company and what your team itself all stand for and have in common. It should unite you as teammates and align your personal goals and commitments to those of the team or the organization. It should be why you choose to be where you are. And these are really the behaviors that you should be exhibiting daily as you work wherever you are to fulfill the company mission and achieve its vision. I want to show you an example, and it's one that we used at a company that I worked for a number of years ago. The acronym is obvious. It's RICE, and the key principles were respect, integrity, creativity, and excellence. And every time somebody didn't treat each other respectively or tried to cut corners in tackling a problem, we reminded each other of the RICE principles. When your values don't align, you'll find you can tolerate it for a little while, but eventually you're going to suffer cognitive dissonance, stress, and likely even burnout. As a corporate executive or team leader, you need to be clear about what you stand for, and then you need to walk the talk consistently or trust erodes very quickly when your employees realize their values aren't consistent with the company's. And as a manager, you in turn need to hold your employees accountable to those values. That's why I believe a company needs to decide and articulate what they stand for at the outset. Once you have a unified team with common principles and values, then comes your team or corporate mission. A mission statement is simply your role in the marketplace. What is the void you fill? What does your team or company exist to do that no one else is doing, or no one else is doing properly, and which you think gives you room to step into the marketplace? What would the world be missing out on, in other words, if you or your company didn't exist? A couple of simple examples of mission statements that I really like are IKEA's, which is simply to create a better everyday life for people. Or TED, if people are familiar with TED Talks, Technology, Entertainment, and Design is what the TED acronym stands for. Their mission statement is simply to spread ideas. People and companies confuse mission and vision statements all the time, but they're very, very different things. It starts with your corporate mission. What do you exist to do? But then you need a trajectory for your company. Where do you aspire to take it? What will the company or the world look like if you achieve your greatest aspirations? It should be so compelling that you're excited to be a part of it. You should be fired up about it and not looking forward to Friday afternoon on a Monday morning. Examples of key vision statements that I really like from over the years were Microsoft's early on, which was a computer on every desk and in every home. And of course, their vision was achieved. Or Alzheimer's Association's current vision statement, which is a world without Alzheimer's disease. Once you have an aspirational long-term target or vision in place, then you set about establishing specific steps to move you in that direction. In other words, goals. Goals are the directions you're heading in as you drive towards your overall vision. It's what you want or need to accomplish to achieve the organization's mission and vision. Goals are tangible, specific deliverables that tell you where you want to be and when. It's the outcome you intend to achieve. Hopefully, folks are familiar with the acronym SMART for SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable or achievable. Some people like the word actionable, relevant, or time-bound. To be effective, a goal really needs to include all 5 of those. If your corporate goals don't meet that criteria and you're an employee inside the organization, you should feel free to challenge your leadership team for clarification so that you in turn can be as effective as possible as you can be in your role. Objectives are subsets of goals. They're also specific, measurable steps you make to achieve the goals. But I find folks are often confused by goals and objectives, intertwining the terms. So, excuse me, I've given you an example here of the difference between a goal and an objective. If your goal is to increase revenue, say, by 10% within 1 year, then objectives would be how you're going to do that. It could involve improve your product pricing by a certain amount, reducing your cost of goods sold by another amount, and increasing production or sales by yet another amount. And the combination of all of those three objectives, if achieved, would enable you to meet your goal of a 10% revenue increase. With goals and objectives in place, you need a roadmap now to get you there. Here's where strategies and tactics come in. Strategies are simply the high-level plans to achieve your long-term goals. It's the path to fulfill the organization's mission. They should focus on the end result or goal, and they should guide your decision-making. Generally speaking, there are three broad categories of corporate strategies. There's growth, which of course is how you expand your business or sales. There are stability strategies, which are how you maintain your core business, such as production levels or revenue, or how you retain your staff. And then there are renewal strategies, which are designed to target shortfalls in the business, things like turnaround strategies. And I don't have it here because there wasn't room on the slide, but an interesting corporate strategy example for you is Tesla. They've set the goal of becoming the world's biggest car manufacturer. Their strategy to achieve that is to kill the low-end consumer car space. Their tactic for doing that, because they couldn't develop and compete at that level initially, was to create the world's most luxurious, expensive, full-feature sports car. Most people will be familiar with it. It's the Tesla Roadster, and it clocks in at well over $250,000. It was a deliberate tactic on their part to then start working their way down from that as their business scales and eventually take on smaller and smaller cost segments of the market. And that leads us into tactics, which are really the list of initiatives to support your strategy. A tactical plan really just describes the steps and actions that you're going to take to achieve the goals of the strategic plan. And I find the same way folks struggle with differences between goals and objectives, they also frequently struggle with the difference between strategies and tactics. So again, I've got some examples here to help illustrate the difference. If your strategy, for example, is to improve the influence of your business by social media, the tactics you're applying then would be the channels that you use or the messaging that you're going to apply. Another example, could be that you want to reduce operating costs by a certain amount. And then your tactics could be at which cost driver you're going to focus those efforts on, and in which parts of the business or which fields that you're operating in if you're an oil and gas company. Ultimately, it all boils down at the most practical level to work plans or task lists. These are everybody's to-do lists at every level of the organization. With well-designed and articulated goals and objectives, strategies and tactics in place, folks should then be able to focus their daily efforts where it will do the most good. We'll come back to work plans in a minute, but I want to finish working our way through the strategic business model structure first before we do that. Finally, once you've decided what your company and team are going to achieve, you need to determine what skill sets and staff loads you need and how best to organize the work to be done. The mnemonic here is structure follows strategy. And frankly, I am always amazed at how often companies get this part wrong and set corporate goals and strategies in place without thought as to how the organization is going to effectively pull it off. And really, it's also the reason most downsizings fail. Employees are let go to reduce G&A without a conscious effort being made by management as to what work will no longer get done or how the work will get done, either to a different standard or in a different way to achieve company goals with fewer staff. Without that direction, the staff are left to fend for themselves and decide for themselves what the priorities are. And you know how that works. It's frequently the guy that yells the loudest that gets their priorities addressed, which aren't always the right priorities for the organization. If you're an employee and you find yourself in such a position, you need to challenge up to determine what the priorities are. And if you're the boss following layoffs, you need to take extra care to ensure your remaining staff know what the priorities now are. For the next two slides, I'm going to discuss how you develop and lay out your strategic plan, whether at the corporate or the team level. It all starts with analyzing and assessing the environment in which you plan to operate and grow your business. In other words, performing a situational analysis. Where is your company or team currently? What skill sets do you have in place? Where do you sit in the marketplace? How are you equipped financially? What's your team morale? Who are your customers? What's their status? What's the business environment you're operating in? Is it one of expansion or recession? Are there unique regulatory hurdles that are confronting you? What's the competitive landscape you're operating in? Where are your competitors stronger than you? Where are they weaker than you? Then you can lay it all out in a strategic balance sheet. I think most folks will be familiar with the term SWOT. I find that term too cliche and worn out for my tastes, really, so I prefer the term strategic balance sheet because it really addresses what you're doing with the situation that you find yourself in. You're trying to balance strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. And here's where you take your assessment and you sort it out. What are the things that make your company or team uniquely strong? For example, it could be particular products that you're selling, operations that you're in, plays that you're in. If you're an oil and gas company, it could be your finances. If you're well financed, you have a strong balance sheet and strong cash flow. What are the unique capabilities or skill sets that your team has? Then with those strengths, what doors are available to you due to those strengths? Where can you expand current operations by taking up partners, for example? Or can you move into new plays or projects? Or where are there opportunities to streamline or reduce your production costs? Then you do the same thing with your weaknesses. What do you need to do to address to strengthen your team and company? Do you have cash flow issues? Do you have legal challenges? Do you have morale issues following layoffs or a weak skill set due to limited training budgets? And then what threats are created by those weaknesses? Where is your team or your company exposed, both internally and externally, as well as to competitors? What new technologies or entrants are there in the market that you need to be paying attention to? And what economic, demographic, or social shifts are underway that could affect your business? With your company or team goals and an honest assessment of your situation in place, now you can structure your strategic plan. I like doing it with a map, a roadmap really. I call it a strategy map. And assembled here is an example with strategies in ovals and tactics in boxes. The strategies listed, you'll see, generally fit into the category of stability or growth categories. And then there are tactics listed underneath that tell you how to execute each strategy. I'll briefly go through them for you. If your strategy is to optimize your existing assets, then you could do it by improving per well production, or if you're a software company, by reducing your sales per client, your cost of sales per client. You could reduce your facility operating costs or your client acquisition costs. You may want to get GPP or UR status on some of your fields, or debottleneck facilities, or find ways to achieve faster deployment of new releases. If you're looking for growth opportunities, that could include your drilling campaigns by field or play type, where you will want to apply new technologies as a company, where you will want to acquire new clients, or where you want to sell more to existing clients. And as going back to an oil and gas company example, they could be exploration plays that you're working on. Another corporate strategy could be to manage your asset portfolio. And you could do that with halo acquisitions in existing fields, consolidating partners in current operations, acquiring companies with complementary assets, and so on. And I won't go through the last one, but it's the same approach for how you would manage your liabilities and risks. And you see the various tactics listed there. When you've got them all laid out on a roadmap before you, then you're able to think about how you're going to structure your team, organize your resources, and what support resources you need, and how are you going to prioritize all of the activities to work your way through the entire roadmap of initiatives that you've set before you. Next, I want to touch base on a really simple and effective tool for keeping things on track and also helping you to set and clarify priorities for your team. This is basically just a glorified to-do list. And if you're not already using something like it in your team meetings, I really encourage you to try it. You see the key elements listed before you. You simply use it as your meeting agenda and your minutes at your weekly, bi-weekly, whatever the case may be, team meetings. It's clean, it's simple. You can put it on your team shared drive, and you don't need to keep separate minutes or agenda documentation. The document serves as your agenda for each meeting, and when a task is done, just archive it on a separate tab for your minutes. There's two things about this approach that I really like. Frankly, folks are often more accountable to teammates than they are to the boss. You might show up at a meeting once or maybe twice and not having delivered on a task that was given a due date at the next meeting, but it very quickly becomes really uncomfortable to look your teammates in the eye and know that you've let them down again. And I find by the time the next meeting rolls around, folks have found a way to get that task taken care of. The other thing that it does is it triggers discussions about what's most important. When an employee says, look, boss, I can do A by that date or B by that date, but I can't do both, then you've got to set the priority. And if the priorities aren't to be different for the two, then it triggers a discussion about how are you going to change resourcing to get them done. So I find this a really simple and effective tool for all of those reasons. Financial modeling is a really detailed and complex topic. We could easily spend a full webinar or more on it. And who knows, Dean, maybe this is a future topic, but it is critical to strategic planning. So I do want to touch on a few key points today. You need a financial model to go along with your strategic plan to make sure your goals and plans for achieving company goals are realistic. Can you afford to do what you want to do? If not, you need to do something about it. Are you going to raise funds or change your plans, for example? At its highest level, models will tell you if your business is even viable. And at a practical level, it should be the tool that drives your budgets. Folks need to be executing their segment of your business consistent with what your financial plan needs to achieve. It sounds obvious, I know, but you'd be shocked at how often it doesn't happen. These models should be run at different levels in the organization. Corporately, to ensure the overall business plan makes sense, and by team or business unit to make sure your part of the company is carrying its weight. Here's actually an opportunity if you're an up-and-coming manager and you really want to stand out in an organization. One way to do that is to show that you know exactly whether or not your business is carrying its part of the operation. I find most effective managers know if they're meeting their budgets or targets or not, but the really powerful ones know whether or not their part of the business is contributing positively or hurting the bottom line. And if you can demonstrate to the executive that you're on top of that, that you know that because of your team, including the G&A and even maybe a portion of your share of the company debt that you're carrying, that your part of the business is worthwhile, you're going to be in a much stronger position to argue for more resources for your part of the business to grow. And you're going to stand out and create upward opportunities for you in the company. There are three basic components to a good financial model. The first one is financial statements, which is really just an overview of income and costs. Some people call it a profit and loss statement, and that'll tell you if you're profitable or not. Then there's your balance sheet, which is really just your overview of what the company owns and owes. Your assets less your liabilities equal equity, which hopefully is a positive number. And finally, cash flow statements. And that's where is all the cash coming in and going out of the company each month, not just operationally, but from all of your investments and financial components as well. And finally, nobody's crystal ball is perfect. So you need to be sure to run sensitivities on how value and cash flow especially are going to be impacted by changes in key underlying assumptions. It'll help you determine your hedging and funding strategies, and it will help you determine how much risk each part of your business can take on, especially if you're looking at pursuing new business opportunities. Finally, I'm going to conclude with a few thoughts about look-backs. Again, a huge topic in scope, so these thoughts are just going to hit on a few of the basics. Almost nothing in business ever goes exactly as planned. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's the world around you. Frequently, it's both. You need to be constantly and consistently assessing what's happened. Is your business modeled correctly? Are you spending your money in the right place? You should be doing this at a project or a program or campaign level. The challenge is for it to be granular enough so that it provides some meaningful analysis, yet large enough so that it's statistically representative. And that requires judgment. You want to look at your actual results versus your budgeted plans, as well as at the forecast at the time the project or the campaign was approved. A good look back should include technical assumptions, cost assumptions, production price and revenue assumptions, schedule and timing assumptions, and execution assumptions. And I really like using external. If you don't have access or you can't afford to use a third company to help you with these, use other teams inside your organization to perform and audit the look back. It sounds crass, but the saying is that nobody's baby is ugly. It's called proponent bias. It sometimes can be very, very hard to be objective about a play that was really important to you. And so I find if you want the most honest assessment about whether or not it was a good use of company resources, it really helps to have an unbiased, not a hostile, just an unbiased set of eyes on the team to help you with your look back.
Thank you, Doug. That was a lot of useful information, and we at Pandel appreciate your time. Thanks again, folks, for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the next in our series. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.